Hello, friends in quarantine. It is day number 1001, it feels like. Today I decided to do Alyssa's birth story in a video rather than written because it's just something that I feel more comfortable doing. Fred will likely be in the background looking for the dot, and if you hear white noise, that's because Alyssa is sleeping in her bassinet right there. So we'll take you back exactly 1 month ago today on March 14th. I was getting my hair done and I remember feeling some cramps, thinking, maybe labor would be starting soon. But I had a feeling for quite some time that Alyssa, baby A at that point, would be coming early, and I would be right. So what ended up happening was that night we went to my in-laws for dinner, and as I was walking in their front door, I remember stopping and going, okay, either I peed my pants or my water just broke. And it turns out it was both my water and my mucus plugs. So at that point I called the midwife, and she had basically said to me, okay, basically you can have your water broken for 24 hours without labor starting. So after that point, we kind of need to induce you and get things going. So I was really hopeful that things would start on their own. That evening, I started to have contractions about every 20 to 30 minutes, but they were only lasting about 20 seconds. So we actually ended up having dinner with my in-laws. I came home, I tried to relax, ended up taking a Gravol and some Tylenol and going to sleep for the evening. And I would wake up about every 20 to 30 minutes for a contraction, a little bit of a cramping feeling, but it didn't really progress beyond that. The following day I woke up, so that was March 15th, the day she was actually born, and I went for several walks. I walked up and down my stairs into my basement. I bounced on an exercise ball, and there was one point when my contractions were about every 5 minutes, but they weren't really progressing more than that. So I had called my midwife, and she basically said, well, why don't you come in for a non-stress test at the hospital? We'll see how you and baby are doing, and then we can kind of make a plan from there, and possibly be doing some sort of intervention when you come in. So that evening at about 5 o'clock, so it had been almost 24 hours since my water broke, because it was the Saturday at 6 p.m. that my water broke. I went in, we had the non-stress test, she was doing great, I was doing great, but nothing was really happening. We did a check and I was 0 centimeters dilated, nothing was happening. So my midwife consulted with the OB on call, and he had basically said, well, we can do some sort of intervention where we do an insertion, or you could go home and we could try to hook you up to an IV tomorrow morning if nothing progresses from then. And at this point, I'm like, well, basically, I'd like to get things going because I'm still having contractions, but they're nothing super significant. So we decided to go with a drug called Cervidil, and you have to basically sit there for an hour, and they monitor you and baby, make sure everything's okay. So everything was great after the hour. It ended up being about 5:30 when we did that, so it was 6:30 by the time we were leaving the hospital. I got up from bed, had a contraction. Went into the bathroom, had a contraction. Had one in the hallway, had one in the elevator, so they really were getting going. But at that point, Trevor, my husband, looked at me and said, are you sure you want to leave the hospital? Are you sure you want to go home? And I said yes, because I feel like it's still going to be quite a while before this baby is born. I was completely wrong. We got in the car. I had several contractions on the way home, and they were very intense and very close together. I got in the house, and I was in my living room crying to my mom because I was in so much pain. I was on my couch. I was on the floor. I was bouncing on the ball. And so basically we called my midwife at that point because it was about 7 o'clock. It had been about half an hour, and I was having contractions every 3 minutes, and they were very strong, lasting about a minute. So the classic signs of having to go to the hospital. So she basically said, well, why doesn't she try to have a shower or try to get her to breathe through it? And there was no calming me down at that point. So I got in the truck with Trevor, and we got to the hospital, and by the time we got there, I had basically said, I am not doing this naturally. I need the drugs. Get me the epidural. So they called the anesthesiologist, and he was in there within the hour, which was amazing. And I was just barely getting by, to be honest. The pain was, you honestly can't describe it unless you've gone through it. Then, you know, fellow moms, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So at that point, I had the epidural and I was getting relief, but only on my right side. So he ended up having to come back, fix the epidural, so that I was having relief. But I had friends tell me that I got the epidural, I had a nap, I did my makeup, I was relaxing. I was not like that. I had to breathe, laugh, and gas as well with the epidural just to get through my contractions. So at about 9:30, they did another check, and I was only 3 centimeters dilated. So I hadn't really changed all that much. And we had arrived at the hospital at about 7:30, 8 o'clock. There was no progression. Zero. I was still at 0 centimeters dilated. So it had happened quite quickly. But my midwife basically said to my husband, have a snack, sit down, relax. It's going to be a little while. Then for me, what felt like seconds later, I looked at my midwife and I said, I need to push. I need to do it right now. And she checked me and I was 10 centimeters dilated. This was at 11 o'clock. So between 9:30 and 11, I had progressed that quickly. And from what I've heard from my midwives and from friends, that's quite quickly for your first baby. So at this point, she says to me, save your energy, Lindsay, because you could be pushing, you know, a couple of hours, and that's pretty typical for first-time moms. So at that point, I started pushing, and they were losing the baby's heart rate. So they were getting a little bit concerned, so they called in the OB, and he basically looked at me and said, Lindsay, you need to push this baby out right now because we can't really hear baby's heart rate. Push. And so I did that, and we did need a little bit of help, so she had to be vacuumed out, but the doctor said that I basically did everything on my own with a little bit of assistance, and so I pushed her within 20 minutes, and little Alyssa Lori Alick was born on March 15th at 11:29 p.m. She weighed 7 pounds 3 ounces, and she was 19 inches long. She did come out with the cord wrap around her neck, but they quickly unraveled that, and she started crying, and she was perfect. She got all her color back. Trevor was my person in the labor and delivery room. I wasn't allowed to have my mom. I wanted both of them in there, but with COVID and everything that's going on, they want to limit the number of people that are in there. So I have to say Trevor did an absolutely incredible job. He is the reason that I got through it. I remember screaming at him saying, I'm going to die. I'm never going to make it through this. But he was so calm. Especially when I was getting the epidural, I had a really hard time sitting still, and he was able to keep me calm and actually make it so that I could have one. So that's kind of how Alyssa came into the world. The best part was when she actually came out, the OB lifted her up, and he's like, look what you have, and her legs were crossed, so they actually had to uncross her legs, and that's when we found out we had a baby girl. And for anybody who knows me, I totally thought she was a boy, so I was completely shocked to see that I had a little girl, and she will be exactly 1 month tomorrow since I'm filming this, and I can't believe it. She is an angel. She sleeps well, she eats well, she poops well, so life with her has been amazing, even though we've been in quarantine. So that's her labor and delivery story. Feels really good to be on camera again. So hopefully you like this video. Maybe there'll be another one coming soon with more newborn stuff. If that's something that interests you, let me know, and talk to you later.